Hello everyone, very good evening. And we start today our third webinar from the English for Finance series. And I would like to introduce you our teacher, Professor Charles Hall, Associate Professor of Applied Linguistics, who is going to be, Charles, I'm sorry, I want to say headliner of our webinar. And we are extremely happy to be here tonight. Today our class is dedicated to business finance, and it is called 6-Minute World, and we will ask Charles what exactly it means, because I have no idea what it means, this expression. So Charles, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be back with you all for this third webinar. Normally, I'm with you all from Saudi Arabia, where I work and live most of the time. But this morning, I am in Florida, where it's only 11:30 a.m., so I'm a little more morning now, and I'm very excited. Thank you all for participating. And of course, I want to thank.
Yes, and Charles, you need to share the screen.
Yeah.
Yes. You need to share the screen. So, yeah.
Right.
Now we can see it.
Okay. Is it shared?
Yes, it is shared.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
And if you've been with us before, you know that you can go online, just online to vivox.app. That's not an app, that's just a web address, and enter this number on your cell phone, and you will be able to take the polls, the questions, the opinions that we'll be doing throughout the webinar. And of course, this will be up every time we have a webinar. I'm going to leave that there for a moment. I want to thank Sophia from the Legal English Center in St. Petersburg for the astonishing cooperation. I'm so pleased to have met her and to be working with her. It's very exciting. Okay, she's made the webinar so much more appropriate and relevant to you all in Russia. She's helped me so much learning, and I've learned so much from her. Well, I hope you've got that number now. It will show up over and over again. And of course, it's not just Sophia I want to thank. I want to thank Jennifer Uller, who is the English language, the regional English language officer for Russia, based in Tallinn right now. And as I understand, Sophia and Jennifer were just at a wonderful conference in Kyrgyzstan, in Ush. And I'm really jealous that I wasn't there with them. Well, what I want you to do now is I want you to, as you said, most of you have no idea what the 6-minute world means. So I want you to give me an idea. Use your imagination. What do you think of when you hear 6-minute world? Go ahead and just type something on your phone. Good, one response so far. What do you think the 6-minute world could possibly mean? 6 minutes isn't very long, is it? No. What's that got to do with law? Usually when we think of law, we think of long processes, weeks and months and sometimes years. And if you've ever read the Charles Dickens legal classic, Bleak House, it goes on for generations. But here we're talking about 6 minutes. So let's find out what that means. What do you think it means? We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on the polling. I'll let a few more. There are 28 people, and I've gotten 5 responses. We'll give you just a little bit more time. Okay, Sophia, you really have no idea what 6-minute world means?
I'm trying to guess, and I think I might have a clue, and now I'm just thinking how to phrase it and to type it in.
So, type it in. Yeah, how would you phrase it? How would you phrase it exactly?
Yes, so how to phrase.
Okay. It's very, very American. I'm not sure anyone else uses this idea. It's based on our legal system. All right, so we're going to stop now and see what most of you have written. Okay, we're closing. We're waiting for the response. And let's see what you all have written. Oh, look at that. Oh, Sophia, most of them know. That's great. A minute per sense. I love that. That's great. Time for persuasion, fast-paced life, legal process, and meeting a client. You know, that's related to something we used to say. We used to say the 4 minutes. The most important 4 minutes are when you meet somebody for the first time. It turns out that's much longer. Now we're down to nanoseconds when you meet somebody. But yes, several of you have written billable period, a billable period, minimal billable. And that's exactly right. The 6-minute world refers to how we bill things. And so 6 minutes is the minimum amount you can bill a client. Now, this is really interesting. This is sort of magic with numbers. So you do something that takes 2 minutes to do for your client, and how many minutes do you bill him for? 6 minutes. So you could see, in theory, you could come up with a lot more than 24 hours a day. But that's actually not possible. It's hard, but we'll see what happens. Well, we say 6 minutes because there are 60 minutes in an hour. And if we have a 6-minute period, it gives us 10 units per hour. And so 6 minutes is 1/10 of an hour, making it very easy to calculate with. So you all know that if something is $25, 1/10 would be $2.50. That's really easy to use. And it's also a nice way because it's very short, but not absurdly short. So for example, $250 an hour for a good attorney would mean for 6 minutes, he would charge his or her client $25. And we'll see how this is billed. That's the word we'll use over and over again. To bill someone. In English, to bill is both a verb and a noun and a proper noun. Okay. Bill from William, but to bill means to send somebody a invoice or a bill, and then you get the bill. Oddly enough, here's a very interesting cultural thing. When we're in a restaurant, we don't ask for the bill. Sophia, do you know what we ask for in America when we want to pay in the restaurant?
Check.
That's right, the check. The check, not the bill.
And that always surprised me. Why check, not the bill?
I wish, this is one of those things when I wish I actually knew, and of course I will know by next week. I will find out why we say check. Check, please.
Yes.
And in fact, half the time we don't even have to say it. We just move our hands like we're writing, and the server brings us our check. Okay. But first, before we look at some legal, I want to do a little bit of linguistics because we're going to need this for what we talk about today. Now, Sophia and I are both linguists at heart, and many of you are linguists too. Many of you are lawyers. Well, these are, oh, that was fast. That's number, okay, excuse me. Okay, first some linguistics. That's weird. Well, these are terms of art. A term of art is a fancy word that we use to mean it has a special meaning in a special field. In law, there are many terms of art. Some people call these jargon. That's not a very nice word. That's a very, very negative word. Legalese, that's a very negative word too. Some talk about buzzwords, but that's not really a term of art. A buzzword is a word that is very popular today, right now. But a term of art is actually something you need to prove that you are a member of a community. So it's like a secret password that tells other people that you're a member of that community. So in Russian, you might have, maybe you have 2 words for heart attack, like we do in English. We have a very simple word, heart attack. Or we have a very medical word that only doctors use with each other. When they use that term of art, it says, I'm a doctor. And when I say heart attack, it means I'm not a doctor. And this is all part of something we call LSP, Languages for Specific Purposes, which of course this course is. It's English for the specific purposes of business finance for law.
And Charles, may I please
Yes.
interrupt you for a second?
Of course, anytime.
Because we have some questions from our participants on YouTube, and that's very good when they write their comments
yes,
and
it
questions.
is. Thank you. Thank you.
So actually, the question is from Victoria and Natalia about why is legalese considered to be negative?
Because anything that sort of ends in ease is usually a negative term. Legalese is actually an old word. I think it comes from 1914.
Yeah.
And it often means the convoluted, very difficult, very archaic forms that lawyers use. And it has the idea of it's intentionally difficult so that non-lawyers don't understand. Do you know the opposite of legalese?
Plain English. No.
I don't even know why I'm teaching. You should be teaching this. Plain English, exactly. We have the plain English movement, which has been around for many, many years now without much success. Last time we talked about boilerplate, and boilerplate was language we have always used and we will always use because we know it works. Okay? And that's the problem. Nobody wants to try anything new because it could go wrong in court. So when we have boilerplate, when we have any language, we have two different things that are related. Collocations, if you're a linguist, you know that collocation is simply two or more words that go together well. This is always culturally very interesting for me to do. Okay, so if I say, this one's easy, salt and, what would you say, Sophia? Salt and?
Pepper.
Oh, phew, good. Sometimes the British people irritate me and they say salt and vinegar, like the potato chips.
I couldn't hear well, and I was like solved, and I'm like solved and concluded, thought it was a doublet, so I...
No, salt and pepper.
Yes.
Or if you're buying potato chips, it might be salt and vinegar. That's a collocation. You expect it. So now the other one that's more cultural, if I say oil and
gas.
Oh, you are a good business person.
Because we have a lot of students and we have a lot of lawyers who work in the industry, in the sector of oil and gas, so it immediately jumps into my mind.
Exactly.
Maybe I'm wrong.
And that's a collocation. And by your using that collocation, it says you're a member of that community. I had a very nice Italian dinner last night here in Florida, and I had oil and vinegar on my salad. So when I hear oil and, I say oil and vinegar. Now, that's a collocation, but an idiom is something else. Idioms are often usually informal, but not always. And idioms are words that if you take them apart and you put them back together, they don't mean what they mean. So in other words, they mean more than what they are. So let's look at the difference between a collocation and an idiom just for a moment. Here is an idiom. What's going to go in there? The bucket.
Should I say, or we are going to have a vote?
No, we're not going to have a vote.
Then kick the bucket.
Kick the bucket, exactly. Yes. Kick the bucket. Now, you know that's an idiom because it doesn't mean to literally go out and kick an empty bucket. It means to die.
Yeah, and actually, I will be keeping quiet when you ask next questions because our participants are very quick and they also write the same. So I will be taking the answers from them. Mm-hmm.
Excellent, perfect. That's wonderful. Okay, now let's try a collocation.
Mm-hmm. So everyone, something, a case. Well, there are so many options, I think.
There are. But what's the first one that pops in your mind?
Actually, the answer that we received, just the case, file, case closed, case, no, sorry, file.
Case closed. Now, that would be if it were after. And this makes a difference whether it comes before or after case. Mm-hmm. But case closed would be a really good one. That's a perfect example of a collocation that is almost an idiom.
Yeah.
Okay?
Resolve a case.
So did anybody have something before the case?
Deal, file, So I would
File,
say
that's
plead
right.
the case. So
Plead the case. I'll plead the case. That's not as common, but it's still a collocation. Nobody would say that's not English. And
ah,
that's what happens with
oh,
collocations.
we have several more options. That's the case. Pursue
Oh, I
the
like
case.
that.
Solve and close.
Oh, look at all those. Those are all beautiful
Yes.
collocations. And that reminds us that often with collocations, there's not just one right answer, but several. But there are also many wrong answers. See if anybody can give me a wrong answer. What is something that can't come before the case? What can't come before the case?
No, no answers. Only not the case. That was the last reply.
Which one?
Not the case. So something before the case.
Not the case. So that's still good. That's really a
still
good one.
Yes.
You could say anyone, such as sweat the case or buy the case. Those aren't collocations because we go, oh, that doesn't put together. And remember, the purpose of collocations is to make you a part of the legal community. So we don't learn vocabulary, we learn collocations.
Yes.
And file the case is the one I thought of first.
Yes.
Let's do two more that have the same root. Statute of.
Okay. Statute.
This one, I bet you know. You probably have one that came right to your head.
Well, I
Wait
have
for
the letter
what?
starting from F. So we have statute of liberty, statute of
Oh
limitations.
no, okay. That's Statue of Liberty, but that's a good mistake. That's a great mistake.
Statute of limitations. So we
That's
have got
right, statute of
50-50 of
limitations.
liberty and limitations. Yes.
Right, I like it. Statue of Liberty, statute of limitations. Okay, very nice. And we, of course, everyone knows what statutes of limitations are. Is how long do the authorities have to charge you with some kind of a crime? And this is a really complicated issue. And I wonder if you guys know this one. This is a very, very term of art in the legal world. Okay, so we had statute of limitations. How about one that comes after and refers to statute of limitations? This is a very, very, very precise term of art that many people might not know. In fact, I doubt many people know this at all. It's very technical. If you have statute of limitations, sometimes there is a pause. Does anybody know what that pause is called? When you're like, maybe you say you have a 3-year statute of limitation, the person runs away and leaves the country, this time limit stops for a moment, and it doesn't start again till that person is brought back to the country. Anybody know that particular word?
We have got some right, someone, law, and limit. These are the answers.
Oh, those are good. Those are good. Those
Cap.
aren't the ones. Those are
Statute
very
cap.
nice. Not the ones I was looking for. What else?
Cap.
Oh, statute cap. They would have to say cap of statute of cap of something.
Period.
Okay.
Then statute period. I would say statute
Statutory
maybe
period.
barred, or something like this. Statute
Yeah.
barred.
Oh, you guys are coming up with great ones. It's a very odd one. Here, statute is the noun and the verb is tolls.
That is very specific.
Right. And this has to do with a bell. This is the sound that a bell makes. So when, as I mentioned, when the criminal or the alleged criminal is escaped the country, the statute tolls. That means it doesn't gain any time. So if the guy is on the run, there's a good idiom, for 5 years, and the statute of limitation was 3 years, he hasn't escaped it, because for the 5 years he was on the run, it didn't count. And then it starts again when we find him. But again, that's a very, very precise collocation. Okay. I thought, since we were talking about statute of limitations, I would just quickly show how complicated it is. Remember, we have 50 states in the United States, plus the federal government, In each state, there are different statute of limitations. In every state, I think, there is no time limit for murder, capital murder. Homicide, that's different. And then as you can see, there are all sorts of different things. Look down at misdemeanors. You all remember that misdemeanors means a minor crime. Felony is a major crime. Misdemeanor is a minor crime. In general, the authorities in Tennessee have a year to find you or to charge you. But if it's related to illegal gambling, they only have 6 months, which makes no sense. Okay. And at the bottom, you can see when statute tolls. The clock doesn't run if the person is out of the state or you didn't see the crime. Okay. And there are special things that don't matter to us. So that was statute of limitations. Now we get to vote. Everybody gets to write their favorite English idiom. What's your favorite English idiom? I have lots of idioms that I really like.
Yes, and you can see if you just joined us to vote, you can see on top of the screen, there is the VVox app, or you can say vvox.com. Then you enter ID and you will be able to join. So you will be to join.
You can vote. Exactly.
Yes.
We've got 2 responses. We're getting more, 4.
And,
What's your favorite?
yes, and we have the 5 seconds delay. Charles just wanted to just
what? Okay.
5 seconds.
So in other words, what I see is 5 minutes ago.
No, 5 seconds. Sorry, 5 seconds.
I mean 5 seconds ago.
5 seconds. Yes.
Okay, what I see is 5 seconds ago. So I'll wait till we get about 12 or 13 people, and then I'll assume there are actually more. Okay, good. Okay, that's about a third. Here we go. One more. Come on, Mr. 15. There we go. Let's see what your favorite idiom is. If you're an English teacher, you know you love idioms. Oh, yes, a piece of cake. No pain, no gain. Call it a day. Yellow dog contract. Who knew that? That's pretty funny. I like that. Oh, black letter law. Interestingly, that is not a idiom. It is a term of art. Now, of course, it really is an idiom, but for lawyers, they don't think of it as an idiom. They think of it as a legal term of art. Raining cats and dogs, bite the bullet, a trying experience. Think outside the box. Oh, I have heard that so many times recently. Okay, so you all know many, many idioms, and law and every occupation has its own idioms. Okay. Now, here are a couple of terms of art that we're going to be looking at tonight. The first is attorney's fees. This is used in the United States to mean the money you pay the attorney. Well, that doesn't sound difficult, does it? No, not at all. But apparently it's not used in all spots. Here's one that's very important in the United States. Billable hours. It almost doesn't sound like English. What's the able there? A bill. So these are hours, or what do you think? Sophia, now you know what this means then.
Well, it means, as I understand, billable hours, these are hours that the lawyers write and fix, I would say, not write, but fix in their records, and later on they will invoice the client, and they will include the exact amount of hours they have worked on the issue of the client. So, and
that's right, exactly. Now, what's really interesting is Sophia is very honest. She said they will write the exact amount of time. Well, that's not really true, is it now? Because what world do we live in?
6-minute world.
6-minute world. So if somebody works on a case for 8 minutes, how many minutes does the client get billed for?
12.
12. That's right.
Question I have, do the clients know it? I'm sorry for a silly question. Like, are they aware of this? So
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
so. Mhm.
They're aware of it. They're aware of it. It's, and in fact, it's part of the agreement. It's part of the agreement. When you go to hire an attorney, it's really important, and this is something that people stress all the time. It's really important that when you go to hire an attorney, that everything be as clear as possible. And ironically, many times lawyers give their clients unbelievably simple, basic, incomplete agreements to sign, to agree to write them a very formal, very complete contract. So it's sort of an irony. Okay. So the billable hours, that's a portion, and exactly. Now the opposite of a billable hour is a non-billable hour. So what do you think a non-billable hour is?
Well, obviously, I would say that these are, but I might be mistaken. So it means that the lawyer probably is doing, I don't know, some research or some other job which they do not invoice the client for.
You said something very interesting. Research. So it depends. If the lawyer is just keeping up with the law, and it's not for any specific client, it's non-billable.
Yes, that's
you're
exactly
doing,
what I mean. But if it's a
that's
research
right,
for a client, then of course that will be a different situation.
completely billable. And these are often administrative things. They go to talk to a partner about, what are we going to do with this case? But they're not really talking about the case. They're talking about how they want to handle it. So they're not working for the client, but they're still doing work. Now, this is an interesting thing to remember. Remember, a couple of sessions ago, we talked about the American rule and the English rule. If you lose a case in the American rule, you don't pay for the winner's attorney's fees. But in the English rule, which is what most of the world really has, if you lose the case, you have to pay your attorney and usually your opponent's attorney too. Ooh, that can be expensive. Theoretically, that's supposed to keep people from filing frivolous lawsuits. Okay. So now this is really important for lawyers. Billable. Well, all right. Now I want to ask you a question. See if you can remember. Why do you think we use 6 minutes as a unit? See if you can remember the answer. Here are your choices. Easy to work in terms of billing, small enough to be able to bill more than 60 minutes an hour. Yes. Established by the Normans when they invaded English in 1066, and the number 6 has a specific legal meaning in terms of time. Which is the correct answer?
Okay.
This should be pretty easy.
Yeah, and while we have people answering, we have a funny question from our participants on YouTube. How about lunchtime? If you spend it with a client, is it considered to be billable hours if your client pays for it for the lunch?
That is a really lovely question.
I like it.
It depends. Okay, so in other words, if you're just having lunch, like maybe you're at a trial and you're really tired and the two of you go to lunch together and
With
you
the
don't
client.
talk about the case,
Yes.
then it's not billable. But if you meet a client and he says, the only time I have available is lunch, then it's billable. That was a really good question.
That's a very good question. I like it too.
I like that. For English teachers, this is what actually happens in Japan. The Japanese businessmen are so busy that they often hire English teachers to go to dinner with them. And because that's the only time they have that's almost free. So the English teachers not only get a very nice, beautiful dinner, but they get paid. Okay. So the same thing can happen to lawyers. So what do we have? We have lots of people who've answered this. Okay, let's see. All right. Sophie, do you think everybody's going to get it right?
I don't know whether I did get it right, so I'm not sure absolutely.
Yep, everybody got it right. Okay. Number two is a beautiful side effect.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, because it's 6 minutes, it means you can, in theory, bill more than 60 minutes an hour. That's probably not. Nobody took number three? Oh, I thought maybe you would fall for that because of Anglo-Norman law.
Yeah.
And interestingly, a lot of people thought the number six has a specific legal meaning. Nope. Nope, 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 nope. Sorry.
Well, we are a little bit
We-
superstitious. We like finding the signs and
yes.
everything, and so.
Do you know any numbers that have specific terms of art or idioms that are important in law? Maybe does anybody know? Ask the audience.
Yes.
Do you know
That's awesome.
any laws that have numbers in them?
That's such a good question. We need to think about
Yeah.
it. We'll give people the chance to answer.
Yeah, we'll give people just a moment. Think about it. Do you know of any kind of a law that has a number in it? In the name of it. Now, obviously, they have numbers in the actual law.
I honestly have only such cases like Hadley versus Baxendale, Donaghy versus Stevenson, because I taught some tort law today, and this is the only thing I can think about. About snails in the bottles.
Yeah, you are too educated. That's your problem.
So no numbers, but we will wait. Maybe some will come up with something.
Okay, let's see if anybody's got one. But this was good. Okay, so the whole idea of 6 minutes is it breaks down into tenths of an hour, making it very easy to work with for the accounting department. Okay, so 6 minutes is 1/10 of an hour, and that makes it very simple to work with. But the number six has no specific legal meaning in American law. Okay, and number two is a side effect, what we're doing. And nope, the Normans didn't bring the 6 minutes. They didn't even have clocks really in 1066. They couldn't have filed by 6 minutes. Did anybody come up with an idea? Did anybody come up with an answer?
We have catch-22, but I have no idea what it means.
Oh, excellent. Oh,
it was
whoever,
Sergei Borisoglebsky who wrote
Sergei,
it.
Thank you so much. That's not a law in the legal sense. This is one of those life laws. Do you all know Murphy's Law?
Yes, I think.
Okay, you all know Murphy's Law. That's not really a law. That's like the law of thermodynamics.
Oh my goodness.
It's not a legal law, but it's sort of like a life. Yeah. Right. So Catch-22 is great. It's based on a beautiful book about World War II by Joseph Heller. And Catch-22 is you can't do something until you've already done it.
That is so too complicated, I would say, for the evening after the workday.
This happens all the time. You go to an office and you say, I need Form 7. Okay. And they say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't give you Form 7 until you have Form 10.
Oh, that's what he's
So
saying.
you go to the next office and say, I need Form 10. And of course, what do they say to you?
You need to get Form 7 first.
That's right. That's a Catch-22. You're just like, what do I do now? It's like what happens to people when they graduate from college at first. They want a job, but they don't get hired because they don't have
experience.
And of course, they can't get experience because they can't get a
job.
So yeah, that's a beautiful Catch-22. That's one of my favorite words, especially in certain countries I have worked in, where much of the world seems to operate on the Catch-22 system. Okay, so no, but that is not what I was thinking. There's an actual real law in the United States. Maybe you've heard of it. The informal name for it is three strikes law. And this is a sports metaphor. In the game of baseball, if you miss the ball, if you try to hit the ball and you miss it, and you do that 3 times, you're out and you have to stop batting. In law in the United States, if you commit 3 felonies in some states, not every state, if you commit 3 felonies, they can put you in prison for the rest of your life. Okay. In other words, 3 strikes, 3 felonies, and you're out for life. So they're very, very strict laws. There have been some horrible cases with that, but that's the only law I can think of that actually has a number. Okay, but the 6 minutes, that is basically because it makes it easy for the accountants. Okay, well, if we're going to talk about how do we charge money, this is a screenshot from a billing software system that I actually use for my consultancy work. And for you guys today, I had been both the client and the attorney. So now here's the billing. That's me. I'm the lawyer who's going to be working on this. And when I click on billing, the software says, hey, how do you want this to be paid? Are you going to pay it? Is the client going to pay it by the hour, on a contingency, a flat fee, a mix of a flat fee and hourly, or the beautiful Latin word pro bono? Okay. We'll go through all of these. These are different ways to finance a case, and these are all very important for lawyers. This is important to make your law firm profitable. If you don't do it correctly, you will not make any money, and we don't want that for sure. Okay, so what's hourly? Hourly, of course, is you pay by the hour, but that's not really true, is it? You don't pay by the hour, you pay by the 6 minutes. Now, the lawyer has a rate. What do you think the lawyer's rate is usually based on? How much does a lawyer charge? It depends. It depends, of course. It depends, of course. So now we'll come back to this. And the important thing is, this isn't what the lawyer necessarily gets. So in other words, if my hourly rate is $250 and I work in a firm, it doesn't mean I will get $250. The firm gets $250, and we'll see, it depends on what I have negotiated with the firm, how much I get. Okay, so the lawyer's rate is going to be high, but it's not just a lawyer who works on a case. Who else is going to work on a case? The paralegal. What's the difference between a lawyer and a paralegal?
Paralegal is a person who is like a lawyer's assistant, and usually this person, there are 2 options, I would say. Either this person hasn't graduated from law school yet and doesn't have the official law degree or a license. Or secondly, there's an option, this is very often happens in Russia, the first option, so how they can work as paralegals, or they have just graduated and they still work as assistants to the lawyers. Or second option, I know that in the United States, we might have some people who work as paralegals who work for like decades as paralegals, maybe because they chose to do it, or maybe because they didn't, for example, receive a license and didn't take the bar exam. So I was never sure whether it was, and it's usually their choice, sort of, so if I may say so.
That was a very good, yes, exactly. The paralegal is very interesting because the paralegals in big firms are the one who do most of the work. Yeah. They're the ones who prepare all the paperwork, they write up everything, and then the lawyers sort of just check it over and sign it. I had a friend who, I think I told you about this before, who used to he worked in the World Trade Building a long time ago when there was still a World Trade Building, and he worked in trust and estates. And he said his main job every day was stapling and signing his name. The paralegals prepared all the forms, he read them over, he stapled them, and then he signed them, and he made a lot of money. Okay. Fortunately, before that horrible event, he changed firms and didn't work there then. Now, the paralegal knows a lot about the law. And here's the interesting thing. They don't have any specific requirements. They know a lot about the law either by training. You can go to the university and take a 2-year paralegal course. Not nearly as hard as a law degree. Or as Sophia said, some of them are law students who couldn't pass the bar exam and couldn't get a license. Or some of them, like some of the women that I know, and I hate to be sexist, but it's usually true, women who have worked in a law firm for 20 or 30 years and know just as much as any brand new lawyer. So the paralegal is someone who knows a great deal about the law but isn't licensed. And they usually prepare the forms, they take care of it, they interview patients, they interview clients. But there's another person in the law office too, and that's the legal secretary. She doesn't need to know anything about the law. And again, I'm being sexist, I'm sorry, but it's usually the case. She just types up forms. She knows how to format stuff, but she doesn't know anything about the law. So would they have the same rate? No, of course not. The lawyer would be very expensive. The paralegal would be about half that. And the legal secretary would just be a regular office worker, often temps. Now, many of you might know the most famous paralegal in television history. Does anybody know who is the most famous paralegal in television history?
So maybe we'll
see if anybody knows that.
Well, I only have these, the Suits movie or
That's
Boston
right.
Legal or something like this, and over there. So, but I don't remember exactly the names and so on. Mike Ross.
But who?
We have Mike Ross. So
that's right. So the most famous paralegal is, of course, now the Duchess of Sussex,
oh my
Prince
goodness
Henry's
Lord.
wife. So she was the most famous paralegal in the world. And she wasn't a paralegal. She was an actor. All right. And indeed, just as you mentioned, if you ever saw the show, she wanted to become a lawyer, but she hadn't been able to pass the law school admission test, which you have to take too. So she couldn't even get into law school. In the United States, it's actually difficult to get into law school. And it's often even more difficult to get out of law school. In many countries, it's very easy to get into law school, but in the United States, it's very difficult. And you might remember that in the United States, law school is after 4 years of university.
Yes.
In Russia, it's the same. You begin law school right after secondary school.
In Russia, it is the fact that you are right after the high school. So you don't have to go for 4 years to get a bachelor degree. Right. So you can immediately go to the university. So it means that in 4 years after bachelor degree, at the age of 22, you are qualified lawyer. And it always amazes usually our American colleagues, because for them, it takes 7 years.
You are qualified.
Yes.
At 22, you're just beginning law school in the United States. All right. Okay. As I said, I work at a law school in Saudi Arabia, and it's the same thing as you. I have students who are 17 and 18 years old, and I'm always just like, why are they here? They're not even humans yet. Okay. So, hourly. Well, here's the next polling. Are paralegals licensed?
And,
what do you think?
And
do they have to have a license?
Just a moment. So I just also want to vote. So.
Oh yeah, please vote. Please vote.
Yeah.
Oh, people are voting quickly for this one.
Yeah. So and while we're waiting, we can also we have a question from Sevara. Should we add secretary rate into the contract with a client, or the secretary's rate is only for internal use?
That's a very good question. You'll see in a moment, I have a sample agreement for the hourly rate, and it mentions only the attorney and the paralegal, because they're the ones who get paid a lot of money. The secretary's rate, the person who makes the photocopies or something, is often just considered part of overhead and expenses. So you would be billed for her, but not hourly, but sort of like as overhead. rather than directly? So that's an excellent question, right? Normally, you don't mention how much the secretary is. Sometimes you do have in a contract how much per page something costs to be copied. Because, copying can end up being very expensive when you have hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents. Okay, let's see if everybody agreed. Let's see. Perfect, exactly. In the United States, there is no such thing as licensing for paralegals. They can either have formal training, they can have experiential training, or they can just convince somebody to hire them as a paralegal. Okay? And it does not prepare you for law school. So even if you've been a paralegal for 30 years, you still have to start over in year one in law school. So it's sort of an odd career. Well, so exactly. No, they're not. Well, here's an example, again, from the billing software that I use of what would happen. So I'm not married, so I decided to get divorced, even though I'm not married. So here is my case, Hall Divorce number 145X. That's the name of the case. Okay. And oddly enough, I'm an attorney. I'm my own attorney, which is never a good idea. And I click, this time entry is billable. This will automatically tell my company that I spent time on this case. And that will help the accounting people so much. They will know how much to bill the halls for. They will know how much I have produced. Now let's go down here and see. So this is today, and the rate that I charge is $250 an hour. And I worked on it for 3 minutes. I worked on it for 3 minutes. I did something very important, but it only took 3 minutes. How many minutes did I bill them for?
6.
6. And 6 is 1/10. So how much are we going to bill the halls for that 3 minutes of work?
25.
20. That's right. Yes. $25 exactly. Okay, so that's how it's billed. Come on, there we go. And this is what it would look like for the firm. The firm would see this. So the accountants would say, oh, yes, Charles spent half an hour preparing the pleading, and he gets paid $250 an hour. So that means we have to bill them $125. Now you think, why do they care? Why do they care how many billable hours I have? Oh, that's really important. Okay. Here is another app. Now we're getting into the actual finance of running a law firm. And this is what the accountants and what the partners would see. Do you remember what partners are?
Yeah.
They're the people who actually own the law firm, and everybody else is an associate. So they want to make sure that the firm is making money. So let's look at this. What a pretty little curve there. It looks like a roller coaster, or it looks like mountains. Okay. Well, we'll come back to that. Look at the top, and we'll see how many hours did someone work last month? 568 hours. That's a lot of hours. Okay. Out of those, how many were billable? 326.
Not much.
Not much. It doesn't sound like much, but that's actually 57% of the time was on billable hours.
Is it good
now
or
look
not?
at the blue chart. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, so is it good or not? So I'm not...
That's good. That's good. That's good.
That's
good.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. It's not good. It's fine. Mm-hmm. This is one of the big controversies in law firms in the United States. This utilization, what percent of your time is billable, is a very controversial topic. Why do you think it's controversial? Why could it be controversial?
Because you basically, the law firm, as I understand, will get only payment for 57% of the time you spend at work.
That's exactly right. They will get external funds that represent 57% of your work. So what are you doing for the other 43%? All sorts of stuff. Okay. Okay. And if you look, I don't think you can quite see it. We look at the bar charts, and we can see billable, dark blue. We can see not billable, lighter blue, and then very light blue, people on vacation. Because that's a really important thing. Okay. If people are on vacation, they're definitely not doing any billable. Okay, good. Now, that final box tells us how much profit they're making. They're making 36% profit. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So this app very quickly shows either for the whole firm or for an individual how much of their time is producing income. Well, now, obviously, if you wanted to make money, what would you want it to be? Not 57%. You would want it to be 100%, but that's not possible.
That's not possible.
And in fact, it's pretty standard. If you have utilization over 70%, it means you're doing something really horrible to your lawyers. They're probably just about dead. Okay. You can't produce that much because there's always something else you have to do. You have to take care of other business work that isn't billable. Okay. Now, well, I hope you guys are ready for some math. Sophia, are you good at math?
I'm horrible at math, so.
This fall, when I had the first year law students, I had 67 first year law students in Saudi Arabia. And so I always ask them two questions. I say, tell me a very public reason why you want to study law. I want to help people, especially the poor, the under, blah, 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 blah. And then I say, okay, what's the real reason you want to study law? And I had 4 young women this year who on the piece of paper wrote, there's no math in law.
Oh, that is wonderful, yes.
I was
expected them to write, like, to make money. So, but...
well, most of my students don't need any money. They're already rich. Okay. That's why many of them wrote to help poor people because, they don't really need any more money. But I'm sure they don't mind making some more. But there were a couple who wrote that. Mainly it's my doctor students who write that, okay, because they're not. Okay. Well, so now this is what you do have to do a little bit of math, but this is what the accounting department would do, not you. But you should know how it works. So I'm going to very slowly take you through how you would say, if your firm said, we want to make at least 20% profit. You ready? Okay. Now, hold on. Don't worry. If you don't get the math, just sit there and smile. Okay. We actually have formulas, believe it or not. Okay. And the bill rate, in other words, how much you should charge your clients per hour, is based on cost, which is on the top, versus how many hours you can work times what percent you expect your lawyers to be doing billable work. So let's look at this. So we've got on the top, that's the formula. On the bottom, we have bill rate equals 80,000. Well, that's the guy's salary. That's how much he makes a year, $80,000. That's not a whole lot. It's not little, but it's not a lot. In the United States, because of our laws about Social Security and insurance and other kind of things, he's making 80,000, but the firm also pays $20,000 in benefits that he doesn't get. That's for like Social Security, for medical insurance, for vacation, all those things that he doesn't get in his hand, but they still cost the firm 30%. And the accountants have figured that it takes about $50,000 to keep him in a well-lit, air-conditioned
Mm-hmm.
office. So altogether, that's all the cost. Now on the bottom, we have 2,080. This is a very reasonable amount of hours somebody can work a year. And then we multiply that by 58%, so that's going to be 1,200 hours. Then you would divide that top number by 1,200, and you would get a number which is 125. So that's how much, just to break even, it's going to cost. So if we didn't want to make a profit at all, we would have to charge our clients $125 an hour. But we want 20% profit. So 20% of that is 24. It's close enough. It's $31. Okay. They've rounded up a little bit, bringing our billable hour to $155. So the guy's making $80,000 a year, but clients are paying $155 an hour for his or her services. If you didn't follow this, don't worry. It just means there's actual math involved in figuring out how much to charge a client.
That is actually excellent, because I was always very worried. Not worried, was always very interested, because I understand that there's so much involved when you have a law firm, because it's not only people, but you have very expensive software, all of these billable systems, and you need to pay for the access to search engines for legal documents and so on and so forth. And I know it's extremely expensive, plus the office, plus electricity, and so on and so forth. And the question I have, so in this very complicated scheme, how about then COVID? For example, when we had pandemic, the overheads basically dropped. But as I understand, well, not a question to you, it's just a kind of philosophical question. The overheads would drop because people would not go to offices, but some of the cases would still go on. So it means that some companies might have earned more money because it's changing, right, all of this.
It was a very complicated thing for many types of businesses with COVID, because there's the other problem. If during COVID, maybe people were less likely to file suit.
Yes, so there was less job.
So there was less work, but it cost less. So they probably still lost money. Almost everybody lost money during COVID. There were a couple of professions where people made money during COVID, of course. People who were giving drug tests. Did I just say drug tests? I did. People who were giving COVID tests.
Yes. Okay. Or who actually invested money into Zoom shares.
I wish I had bought into Zoom years ago.
Don't we all?
When I remember seeing Zoom years ago and thinking, I will never use that. And now, of course, I use it for everything. This morning at 2:30 in the morning, I had a class with my law students in Saudi Arabia. They were very angry at me because they had a very hard midterm. Okay, very hard midterm. You mentioned something very interesting that's very interesting for other people outside the United States to know. You talked about the search engines that lawyers have to use. They're very specific and they're very expensive. Why do lawyers use them? Because they're really easy. And how do they know to use them? This is so clever. The companies that run the search engines give law students free access to the search engines during law school. It's like a drug dealer.
Yes.
Here, you can have this drug for free for one time. So obviously, when the law students finish law school, they are so used to using that particular search engine that, of course, when they go into business, they want to continue using it, and then the companies have to pay for it. Okay, so it's a very, very clever marketing tool. This is like giving somebody a free razor, but charging them lots of money for their razor blades.
Oh, yes.
You just keep making it using. Well, this is the controversy. When a lawyer signs a contract with a big firm, they usually have in the contract how many billable hours they are expected to produce a year. And it depends. It depends on every firm. But there are some companies that say you must produce 3,000 hours of billable time, not just time, but billable time every year. Now, I, in my trusty calculator, saw this. If you are trying to bill 3,000 hours a year, that means you have to bill, not just work, but bill 8.2 hours every single day of the year. Whew. If you read this from lawyers in the United States, I'm interested in knowing about, do we have some lawyers? This is an impolite question, Sophia. Are you ready for an impolite question?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would like to ask the lawyers, on average, how many hours a day do you actually work?
So we will just ask, yes. So we will wait for our students, so participants.
Yes,
apologies.
yes,
so
we're waiting for them.
Speaking about me, it depends, because as I run my own business, I would say, billable hours. It means when I actually when I actually do classes, because I am not only the owner of our center, but also I'm a teacher. So, and I could compare it. So when I'm actually paid for, like the teacher. So, but then I also spend enormous amount of time doing some, anything, marketing, sending emails, working with our teachers and so on. I do have an administrator, wonderful Natalia, so a secretary who helps us. She is amazing with all of the paperwork, because I'm very bad with it. So fortunately, she's an angel. So, and that's very interesting. So, but actually when I'm paid money, so for my job, but I also have a share of my profit, so of everything that I earn. So that's a different thing, but I never actually calculated it. So for this extra money, so it's well, so, I mean, like per hour or something like this. I just know how much I would get. And we have some.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Do you pay yourself per hour for the classes you teach?
I know how I'm like getting, yes. So I know exactly how much I'm getting for every class I teach per 45 minutes. Because we have like academic hour.
Academic hour.
Yes. So we teachers also have our 6-minute world. We do not teach by 60-minute hour, but 45-minute hour. So I think
right. So how many hours do we actually have during the day? We have more than 24 too.
Yeah, so I would say yes.
But I'm not teaching 24 classes a day. Oh no. So what did our lawyer friends
we have
who are
15,
anonymous?
So yes, it's billable hours per day. So it depends. Some say 15. So
a day?
Well, that's the answer. So then 8, 10, 11, 8, 9, 8, 10. But it means maybe they're writing that the amount of the work per day, not just billable, but work per day. So, but maybe it's billable. Yes.
So it's rough. Yes, it's expected of an attorney in the United States that he will work or she will work 12 to 15 hours a day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week. It's really phenomenal.
And a lot of us read John Grisham books when they or some people write 4, so it means that's the billable hours per day. So. And there is a clarification that 15, it means both billable and non-billable hours.
Okay, so that's office hours. You're in the office for 15
yes,
hours.
Office hours, yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes. So this is the interesting thing. So if you had a contract that said 3,000 billable hours per year, that would mean 8.2 hours every single day of the year. You wouldn't have a single day off, not even Christmas. Or you wouldn't be able to produce it. What were you going to say about the John Grisham novels?
Yeah, just wanted to say that some of them are wonderful. So I don't like all of them, but some of them are really wonderful, and especially and very often are related to a lawyer who just starts his work, and they remember that sometimes there is a competition who comes to work earlier. So some
Yes.
come to work at 7, 6. If they're like tough and just beginning, they might even come at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it is appreciated. And when you read it, it's like, oh my goodness, Lord, who would love to go to become a lawyer? They're strange people.
I'm too lazy to be a lawyer. I like knowing about the law, but I'm too lazy to actually be a lawyer. So I really I respect those people who are lawyers, because I know how much work
It's
it
hard.
really is.
It is hard.
So much.
Very specific.
Speaking of John Grisham, I'm from Memphis originally, not originally, but for the last 30 years. And that's where, very close to where John Grisham was originally from. And so many of his novels took place in Memphis, and several of the novels were filmed in Memphis. The Firm, The Client, some of the other ones. So many of them are there. So John Grisham is a very well-known, famous person in my city. Okay. Again, I don't like all of his books, but they're fun to read, and they're very interesting because you know that they're basically legally correct.
Yes, because
which is very important. I
because
like
he
that.
used to be a lawyer for long. So
Yeah, oh yeah, he was a lawyer. He's now a very famous thing. Well, 3,000 hours a year, that's a lot. So do you think that there should be legal limits on how long a person can work? Now, if, for example, if you're a waiter or if you're a housekeeper, I assume that Russia has, you can't work more than many hours a week.
yes, there are certain limits, but of course there are certain exceptions, and they say
Of
that in
course.
some situations, because of this or
Yeah.
that, if the person agrees and there will be pay for overtime, sometimes there is no pay for overtime, it depends, but actually yes, there are certain limits.
Yeah, limits. But if you work for a salary, in other words, 80,000 a year or whatever, there are no legal limits, basically. But do you think there should be for people like lawyers? Should the law say, okay, you can only be in the office for 12 hours and you can't take any work home with you? That's an interesting question. I mean, it's like some people, of course, are yes, some people are no. Let's see what our audience said. You ready? Ah, yes, good.
Yes.
Too bad. There aren't any. And as Sophia was saying, there's often a competition. Remember, we talked about the fact that a new lawyer comes in as an associate, and she has to prove to the older people that she is worthy of staying and becoming a literal partner in the company. And she has to prove that she works very hard, that she works much harder than the guy next to her. And so that's right, as you mentioned, it becomes this sort of silly race. Who gets in first? Who stays latest?
Yes, and people
So-
are proud if they stay later sometimes when they
Oh,
are just
yes,
new to
right.
the company. So
I'm usually the opposite. I'm like, I got my work done by 3. Okay, so obviously, if you're going to hire a lawyer, you have to set, and this is a very confusing term, that's why I'm bringing it up. Again, this is a term of art. You have something called a retainer agreement. Now, some of you might know another word, retainer. If you have braces on your teeth, that's a
Yes.
retainer. But also a retainer is what you pay a lawyer who will be available for you. He's not doing any work for you right now, but you give him a sum of money every month, and he promises that he will be available to do the work for you. So it's sort of like keeping him on the, oh, here's a good English idiom, on the back burner if you need him. Okay? We actually do this now with doctors too. This is called concierge medicine, where you pay the doctor a certain amount of money every month, whether you need the doctor or not, And if you get sick, he guarantees that he will come and see you almost immediately.
If
I have a
I'm
friend
not
who does
mistaken,
that.
I might be mistaken, and our participants can correct me. If I'm not mistaken, in Russia it's called абонентское обслуживание. It's when you are like abonent, so it means like you are a client, you pay certain amount of fee, and like every month it's just the same, and you can just call anytime and ask a question and so on and so forth, and a lot of people do it. I might be mistaken. So, and we have a question.
Yes.
Does a retainer also mean that the lawyer will not agree to represent your
Yeah,
opposing
yes,
party?
right, right. Exactly. He can't do, there can be no conflict of interest. In fact, that's often one of the very first things that a lawyer does is he searches for possible conflicts of interest. So, for example, in a divorce case, the same lawyer can't represent the husband and the wife, and the same firm shouldn't represent the husband and the wife. Okay, so yeah, if you're on a retainer, you basically have said, you're not my lawyer, but you're on my side. And that's a really good question, right? I think sometimes by accident, especially in the larger companies, it might happen by accident because not everybody knows everything, but you're supposed to search for that first. You're supposed to search for a possible conflict of interest. For example, if you want to sign this, the lawyer can't suggest you sign it. That would be a conflict of interest. There is often a clause in something like this agreement that says, I cannot help you decide whether to sign this agreement or not. If you want advice, you must ask another attorney on whether I should sign this agreement with me,
This is
because that would be
wonderful.
conflict of interest.
Yes.
So here, retainer, however, doesn't mean monthly payment. Here, legal retainer agreement simply means legal agreement. You could take out the word retainer and it would be justifying.
In Russia, we
And
very
you can
often
see,
call it agreement for legal services. And
that's
that's
right,
what,
agreement for legal services. This is the old. Again, remember we go back to that plain English versus legalese? Again, this has been called this forever, so nobody wants to change it. It would be so much easier just to call it an agreement for legal services, and you're done. And it says, and the fee arrangement by which attorney will represent client in the following matter or proceeding: divorce. Good. And of course, they can't guarantee you will win. And here are the legal fees. Legal fees are based upon the following hourly charges. And here we have just the attorney and the paralegal. Legal assistant is pretty much the same as paralegal. Okay, good. And it tells you how you will do that. In addition to legal fees, notice under costs and expenses, okay, this is what else? Nobody has long distance telephone calls anymore. That used to be such an important part. If you were doing a very long, if you're doing a case around across the country, that was actually really, really expensive. It tells you what kind of fees you also have to pay. Now at the bottom, it says retainer. This again doesn't mean retainer like I pay you every month. This is basically, we could cross that out and put deposit in there. Okay. Now, what's interesting is we'll come back to this. So if I give you $10,000 because the lawyer thinks it's probably going to be about $15,000 to do this case, and I give you $10,000 now, that's before the lawyer has billed me anything, because he's billing me by the hour. The question is, where does that money go? I want you to be thinking about that. I give you $10,000, but you haven't billed me for anything yet. So it's not really your money. So where does the lawyer have to put that money? We're going to come back to that in a moment. Well, the other side is called a flat fee case. Now, again, we're going to ask our audience, what kind of cases do you think would be really good for a flat fee instead of by the hour? What would be really good for a flat fee? What kind of cases? We only have 14 minutes left. My
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
we
Sophia,
have, yes, we have,
good,
yes,
go
yes,
ahead.
go ahead. We have a person who wrote real estate. Would be okay
Absolutely.
for flat fee.
Remember, do you remember the term from last week? Real estate closing?
Closing.
Closings are always almost exactly the same. You know exactly how long it's going to take you. You know what paperwork it's going to take. So you can say, it's going to cost you $1,257. Okay. Can you think of any other cases?
No answers
Oddly
yet.
enough, go. What do we have? Does anybody have any?
No. Maybe
Okay.
IP, maybe patent. Some, I don't know. Insurance. Someone wrote insurance.
Some insurance is that one of the most common flat cases is something that we all need and we don't want to think about, and that is our will.
Yeah, someone wrote doing a wills. Yes.
Oh,
drafting
exactly.
wills.
That's the almost stereotypical. You know exactly how long it's going to take to do a will. In fact, I'm surprised anybody goes to a lawyer for a will anymore because we have such great software that you can buy for $50 that will make you a legally valid will as long as you don't have any complications. No complications, please. That's when you need a lawyer. But if you're just a simple person, it's completely predictable and it's generally not complicated. A real estate closing, a simple will, and oddly, a simple divorce. Most divorces are simple today. They didn't always used to be. Well, here's a very strange example, and it's a very sad example that, again, is because of COVID. Eviction.
Yeah.
What is eviction?
Eviction when people are kicked out of the, sorry, pardon my language, but that's the best, I think, option. When they're kicked out of the place which they were renting. I actually had this situation when I used to live some period in US, and our neighbors got evicted. That's when I learned this word, and because they were not paying the rent, and they had the paper on the door that's from the judge that they were supposed to leave the place within 24 hours. That was very quick. And I remember that later we all suffered because they were very in dispute with our landlord, and they left some chicken in the fridge, and it was in Florida.
Oh no.
And in 2 weeks the smell was unbearable because of course the electricity was cut off, and they specifically left it. They knew what they were doing. So that was eviction in my mind is connected with a lot of emotions. I would say.
Oh, and smells.
And smells, yes.
That's a horribly wonderful story.
Yes.
Oh, that's awful.
That was awful. So they knew exactly what they were doing. So.
Oh, of course they did. Of course they did. So yeah, so Sophia said it's when you get thrown out, usually because you haven't paid your rent, although there can be other reasons for being evicted if you're doing something illegal. But generally, it's for something very uncomplicated. You didn't pay your rent. During COVID, many cities and a couple of states and some of the federal loan companies had a moratorium on evictions, meaning they couldn't evict anybody during COVID. Because where would they go? You know, it was really going to be impossible.
Yes. And we have
So-
over here also, pardon, so just
go ahead.
some addition from one of the participants, from Farukh Mamedov, that some notice of eviction can be due to foreclosure. Very interesting and complicated word. So
That could be more complicated, right? Right. Foreclosure is when you didn't on a loan, whereas simple if you didn't pay your rent. Foreclosure can be a nightmare, and of
there
course
are-
it's a very.
And there
Go
are a
ahead.
couple of more questions that
Oh, no, good.
maybe can a company and corporation or any similar work can also be billed on a flat fee.
Absolutely. For example, articles of incorporation. If you want to set up a corporation, a company, in most states, it's completely predictable. There are 7 forms. I don't know how many. There are 7 forms you have to fill out. and it takes an hour and a half for a lawyer who knows what he's doing. And that's perfect. That's perfect flat fee. Very good example. Articles of incorporation or dissolution, getting rid of a company or other way. So there are many things that are things. For example, something like a name change. You know, in the United States, it's very easy to change your name legally. And you go to a lawyer, you can fill it. You can actually do it yourself very easily too. But some people go to a lawyer, he charges them $400 or $500, and he fills out the paperwork, and a few days later, your name is legally changed. It's very simple. So with Avik, so fat place. Now, I wanted to find a example. This is something that can't be done everywhere. This is an attorney advertising for clients. This is not possible in all countries. In the United States, lawyers can advertise. And only very well in my lifetime recently. Now it's been, 50 or 60 years, I think. And this is actually a really fun one. This is from right down the street from where I am right now. So in Florida, we have beautiful weather, but don't let your non-paying tenant ruin your life. So attorney Ryan Shipp will quickly remove the tenants, and he will charge you $1,500. And that includes everything to get rid of a client. Now, that's a lot of money. But if you're charging $2,000 or $3,000 a month for the property, it's not that much.
It's not that
now,
much.
what does that include? This is what he said. He has listed everything it includes. Consultation, serve notice. Serve notice is that's the piece of paper that goes on the door. Serve a process complaint, all of the mailings. Oh, so many things. Okay, good.
Yes.
And you can even up to, and this I was very surprised, they will even go up to 2 hearings in court. I was surprised about that.
That
I didn't
is
expect
kind of a
that.
small fee for such a representation. And we have a question.
Right. Yes.
I
So
have a
in other
question.
words,
Yes, sir.
go ahead.
Go.
What's the question?
Sorry, from Ekaterina Sergeyeva. How many retaining agreements can one lawyer have? Can there be a limit or not?
No.
Okay, sorry. Sorry for
Which
jumping
is
in.
very bad because what is the there is a very sad, pathetic case. We will not talk about politics, but I will mention January 6th. Okay. And there were some very unfortunate things that happened in the United States on January 6th. And many of those clients are going to trial now. They have been charged with criminal things. There is one famous client whose lawyer said to the judge, "I'm sorry, I have so many cases, I can't really prepare this guy's case well. Can I do it later?"
Oh my goodness, Lord. And what the
Yes.
judge answered?
Oh, he yelled at the lawyer. He was like, "What? How dare you say that to me?" So the question that Ekaterina asked is a very, very good question. Unfortunately, it's completely what the lawyer thinks he can get away with. Remember, he might have many, many paralegals working for him, and so he only represents the name, but all the work is actually being done by a non-lawyer. So it depends. It depends. But that was a really good question. Okay. So as you can see, a flat fee is pretty straightforward, and you can even find them on web, what to do. This is, and I wanted this one, this is from a slightly different one. This is a flat fee thing, but I want you to look at the word right in the middle there. Witness this. Witness this. I can barely even say it.
It immediately jumped into my head. This is so...
Did it? Good. That is the 18th century standard English form for witnesses with all these TH. So if you read Shakespeare, who was from the 17th century and a little earlier, he has lots of verbs that go like speaketh or prayeth or goeth Who goeth there? Okay. And these are the old forms. And again, what Sophia mentioned earlier today, plain English, we don't need witnesses. But lawyers are afraid to change what has always worked for fear that something will go wrong in court. So this is a perfect example of a silly, silly English that's no longer English, but it's still used in law. And so this makes it true legalese. Okay. We're running out of time. And I can't believe this is going to happen again. This is the second time my poor friend's story isn't going to be able to be talked about. We talked about contingency fee, and we talked about whether it's legal or not in many countries. You remember contingency fee means you don't get paid unless you win the case. It's not quite that simple, but that's basically the thing. So in other words, if you get hit by a car and you want to try to sue the driver of the car for a lot of money, but you don't have any money to hire the lawyer, you go to a personal injury lawyer, and she says to you, I will take your case because you have a very good chance of winning, and then I will get 33 to 40% of whatever we win. Yay! That's a contingency fee. No money up front. Well, we won't have time for it again. I can't believe this.
But
I have a good friend who is a, go ahead.
We will read it through the presentation because everyone
Yes,
is
right.
interested.
So I want you to read this. It's my dear friend's account of the fact that he's a very successful lawyer who works completely on contingency. And I can tell you, he has one of the nicest, biggest houses in Memphis.
And yes. And
go ahead.
Charles, can we ask you a question? Because
of course.
We had them couple of through Telegram. So can this billing system and finance system, can it be also used not only for lawyers, but in other businesses, for example? I don't know, dentists and so on. So or it's only specifically for lawyers or in other professions as well?
It's really interesting. These are basically based on the idea of billable hour. If you're a dentist, there is specific software for a dentist because they don't use billable hours. They use types of operations. So in other words, whether you're going to have an extraction, a crown, or how many sides of a filling on your tooth. So you charge by the work done, not by the actual amount it takes. Now, of course, the dentist knows almost exactly how much time the work is going to take. So it's pretty much the same, but these are specifically designed. In theory, a dentist could use one of these, but it's not the best software for a dentist. Yeah. It's a perfect, I'm a consultant, so this is perfect for me, except I work for myself.
Yes.
So it doesn't. Now, Sophia, you have other teachers, right?
Yes, and we have a special software. We have
and you have special software, right?
Yes, we have a special system.
These are really, this software is specifically designed for people who have billable hours.
Yes.
And so if I wouldn't use it for anything except someone like a consultant, maybe a psychologist. A psychologist could do that. Yes, why not? But again, they have special.
Yeah,
accountants, right?
Yeah,
right.
Something like that.
Everybody who has that, but almost every career now has specialized software that's specifically designed to make your life easier. But that was a good question too. Well, all right. So we have to skip my friend.
Yeah, because we need to finish up. We have like 1-2 minutes, and then we need to
1-2 minutes. Okay.
Yes.
So we're going to go on to our very last question again. Okay. Pro bono. When you don't charge the client at all. This is not required in the United States. Most people think it is. The American bar encourages it. You should try to have 50 hours a year that you do for free for poor people or nonprofit organizations. And interestingly, in law school, all law schools must, but they're not required, must provide opportunity for their client, for their students to learn. Well, now, all of this takes us right back to money and time that we've talked about, the types of fees we've talked about, how productive is the lawyer. We didn't get much into banking. We'll do that next time. And we did a little bit of linguistics with collocations and idioms. And so to finish up, as usual, what I want you to do is, what word do you remember most from tonight?
That is such a good question.
What word do you remember most? Just go, oh yeah, that's what I remember. It's usually something new, or it's something unusual, or it's something you knew that you were happy to learn more about. Whatever. And while you're doing that, again, I want to thank Sophia and her crew, Raman, or it's a Roman, right? But it's a Raman in Russian.
Yes.
I always, because by Czech, I say Roman, but it's, and I want to thank them all for making it so wonderful to work with you all, even so far apart. It's really spectacular.
And right now,
and again,
we
all wish we had.
You are truly overseas. There's truly an ocean in between us.
Literally, we could, it's almost impossible to get much further away. Okay, so let's see what words people remembered or remind things. Da, 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 da. Closing, and the answer is, oh, it is taking a while. Oh, I like that. The statute toll. Somebody remembers that. Collocation, story about my friend. It depends. Yeah, exactly. It depends. Pro bono, misdemeanor, felony, pro bono. Oh, wow. And 6 minutes. A lot of people had something on 6 minutes. So that's what we've talked about today. So now you know what the 6-minute world is.
Yes.
And you also know what a catch-22 is. Something we hope we never find ourselves in.
Yes.
And we'll see you again in 2 weeks. And I want to thank you all, and especially Sophia and Raman, for making this possible. If you have any questions, I'm sure Sophia will send them to me, and we'll try to answer them.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And you guys have a nice day. I'm going to go have lunch.
And thank you very much, Charles, because it was really wonderful. And I think for many, many of us, this notion, this idea of 6 minutes is just amazing, because I was not familiar with it, honestly, absolutely, and it was so interesting. And we are very grateful to you, because your webinars, your classes give us so much pleasure and so much information. So thank you, and we are looking forward to the next one. And me and Roman, who is Roman, can you please just come into the picture? Давайте загляните, чтобы вас тоже было видно.
Yeah.
This is our technician.
Hi,
Yes, he's always on guard.
Roman.
Yes, who is always on guard and helping us to do all the technical job. And this beautiful layout is thanks to him.
Exactly.
And we would like to thank very much our participants who have been so active today. We love your questions. We love your comments. Thank you so much. And it was wonderful to be with you tonight. So, and see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much, Charles. And we thank very much Jennifer Uller and Regional English Language Office for making this project alive and making it happen, and for bringing you, Charles, to us, to cold,
my pleasure,
rainy Russia from sunny Florida.
Sunny, beautiful Florida.
Yes, sunny, beautiful Florida. So see you in 2 weeks, and bye-bye, and you enjoy your stay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.